Let's be honest, the reason you haven't hit your goals isn't because there's this one little hack that you need to know, or once this one thing happens, everything is gonna change. The reason you haven't hit your goals is because you allocate your two most valuable resources, your time and attention, to digital distraction, not to your goals. This was the realization I came to at the end of 2024, and since then I've lived without digital distraction from my life completely. This took me from an out-of-shape 9-to-5 worker dissatisfied with his life to building an online business, becoming a digital nomad, becoming conversationally fluent in a new language, and running 11 marathons all in 1 year. Ditching digital distraction was the greatest competitive advantage that I ever gave myself. But this isn't something that I achieved from having elite level willpower. This is something I built using an engineered system. So in this video, I want to run you guys through this system so you can use it and implement it for yourselves to give yourselves the greatest competitive advantage imaginable. A lot of us are spending a huge amount of our day on digital distraction, and this is a huge amount of our time, an incredibly valuable resource that we're allocating to complete waste. Realistically, you're not learning very much on digital distraction, you're not really producing anything, you're not moving towards any goals. All you're doing is sitting there and distracting yourself from the things that you actually need to get done. And all you're doing is you're allocating time away from your goals towards pure distraction. One of the biggest problems that comes up here is that it keeps you comfortable not progressing. It keeps you very satisfied with the fact that your life hasn't changed whatsoever. You keep living the same 6 months over and over again, and nothing about your life changes, but you don't feel so bad about it because you constantly have this feeling of comfort from your digital distraction. All this is doing is making us feel really good despite not having actually earned that feeling whatsoever. We don't bother and go out and pursue a goal or go and do something challenging to feel a reward because we can simply get this feeling of reward for doing absolutely nothing. This leaves us incredibly comfortable not progressing, not moving forward, and as a consequence, we don't progress and we don't move forward. A lot of us know this is a problem now. We know that this is a clear bottleneck standing between us and our goals, but we don't really know how to get rid of this stuff. We think, okay, I'm just gonna get rid of everything. I'm just gonna quit everything and it's gonna be great. And what happens is you remove everything for maybe a day, maybe a week tops, and after a while, all of these bad habits start coming back in, and after 2 weeks, you're right back to where you were, except not only are you back to where you were, but you also feel like a failure. If you decide to rely on willpower, there's only one guarantee, and that is that you will fail long term. If you're trying to get rid of the biggest bottleneck standing between you and your goals, and you're relying on an emotion that guarantees that you won't get there, this is not very intelligent. So there are 3 key pillars that will actually get you to remove digital distraction without relying on willpower, and that is your physical environment, your social environment, and your mental environment. If you can inflict change on these 3 things, you can genuinely remove digital distraction completely without relying on willpower whatsoever. Now, this is exactly what I use to get rid of all online entertainment by myself since the end of 2024, and I will never go back because of how well I've set up this system. So let me break down each one of these parts so I can show you exactly how the system works. So currently the way that most of us are attacking this problem is we look at our situation. The only thing that's stopping us from digital distraction is willpower. This is currently the only thing that we're relying upon. And this is extremely fragile. This means that at the very start, this will be very, very successful. This will work well for a day. For a week, it will work extremely well. It might prevent you completely from consuming digital distraction, but give this even a small amount of time, zoom out just slightly, and you'll realize that this does not work whatsoever. See, what happens is you will have this willpower initially, and you can consider this willpower like a sort of motivation. At the very start, when you go, okay, this is clearly a big problem. My pain is very high. I want to get rid of this. What's going to happen is you're going to have a huge amount of willpower, and you're going to think, okay, I really, really need to get rid of this. This is fantastic. This stuff sucks. I'm going to get rid of it. But then after a while, the willpower starts to fade and you start to slowly reintroduce the digital distraction. And this is going to continue happening, and you're going to continue adding back more and more and more and more until a point of extreme pain where you go, I'm extremely dissatisfied with my situation. I'm right back to where I was. Something about my life has to change right now. So the willpower comes back and you start getting rid of stuff. And then over time you think, good, I'm doing really, really well. But these standards start to slip again, and you're going to drop back down until the point of extreme pain where you come back up again. Now, not only does this mean that zoom out long term, you're just not going to be able to consistently eliminate digital distraction, but also the trigger for you to actually get back to where you were is pain. This means that the only way that you're going to change is if you put yourself through extreme amounts of pain, which is of course not very enjoyable whatsoever. If you want to be able to live a life that you don't completely hate yourself half the time, then relying on the trigger of pain is not going to be the best approach. Now, this isn't to say that willpower will not help you get rid of digital distraction. In fact, it can be very beneficial short term at starting this process, but we have to start introducing more reliable systems. If willpower is fundamentally an emotion, then we cannot rely on it long term because we can't particularly control it all that well. There's a lot better things that we can use to fundamentally control and change that can be stable and consistent over time. The first of these things is a physical environment, is a very good physical environment. So rather than the only thing stopping you from consuming digital distraction being willpower, you add access prevention here. Realistically, this is the core of your physical environment. What we're trying to do is we're trying to add as much friction as possible standing between you and consuming digital distraction. So let's say, for example, you really wanted to stop eating cookies. Now, you could have the best willpower in the world, but if I put a jar of cookies in front of you, how long are you going to last before you eat a cookie? Maybe a few hours, maybe a day, but eventually you're going to get hungry and you're going to eat a cookie. If I locked you in a room and I said, okay, there are no cookies in here, you can't leave this room, guess what? You could really want to eat cookies. You could have zero willpower whatsoever and think, I would eat all the cookies in the world. If you don't physically have access to the cookies, you cannot consume them. And that is the whole point of the access prevention, is we can very quickly make it extremely difficult to access digital distraction. And if we can make it really hard to access, then no matter if we don't have any willpower whatsoever, we physically will do this a lot less. And as I mentioned, the reason for this is that we're adding a lot of friction. For any action that you do, the more friction that you have in place, the less you'll do the action. If you have an extreme amount of friction to the point where you physically cannot access an action, this would be peak friction, you can't do it. You will do it zero. You will never do the action. The less friction we have, the more we do the action. And the problem is for us right now is most of us have zero friction whatsoever standing between us and consuming digital distraction. We can very quickly put our hand in our pocket, pull out a block that weighs about 50 grams, and just start swiping our finger up and instantly access this digital distraction. This is extremely low levels of friction right down here, which means that you're going to do the action a lot. What we're trying to do here is add as much friction as possible to the point where it is almost impossible to access digital distraction. This is absolutely the first place to start, and one of the big reasons for that is that it takes a little bit of effort to set up, but it instantly inflicts behavioral change over a very long time horizon. Now, the reason this is so extremely strong is that you will have to front load the effort and build out your physical environment. This might take a small amount of time and effort, but very quickly, there is zero effort whatsoever required to maintain this system. As long as you've actually built out a strong physical environment, as long as you've restricted access and added a huge amount of friction to digital distraction, there's very little, if anything, that you have to do to your environment after that. Unless you physically tear down this environment and bring yourself back to where you were, there's almost zero effort that you have to do, but the impact remains very consistent. The friction does not change whatsoever. And this is incredibly powerful because this means that you can front load effort once and you can instantly have a huge impact on reducing your access to a huge bottleneck standing between you and your goals. This was the very first thing that I did when I eliminated online entertainment, was I just stripped back access to absolutely everything to make it nearly impossible to use. This was incredible short term because it just meant that I couldn't access this stuff. And if I couldn't access it, I can't do it. Or if I could access it, it was extremely hard. There was a lot of hurdles to get over for me to actually consume digital distraction. This was the perfect place to start, but the next thing I implemented was even stronger. This is our social environment. Now, I knew this was strong, but very recently I had a cohort come through my Modern Monk program, and what we noticed is that the social environment had the biggest impact over changes during the 6-week period. This had a huge impact over behaviors and over preventing consumption of online entertainment. Once we added an extremely strong social environment, within 2 weeks, every single person was at 0 minutes of digital distraction. This is people that were spending tens of hours a week on digital distraction, and within 2 weeks of adding this social environment, we got it to absolute 0, which to me was very surprising. I knew this was strong, but I didn't quite realize how much of an impact this had. See, rather than the only things between us and our digital distraction being willpower and access, when we brought other people into the situation, when we added this social pressure, it made a huge impact. This was the big block that prevented anyone from getting to the point where they wanted to consume digital distraction. Although the access and the friction was powerful, when you bring other people in towards your success, rooting for you or pushing you and pressuring you, adding competition, this made a massive difference. When I think about approval, I'm thinking about, how do my actions make other people feel? Am I holding up to my promises? Am I making sure that I'm doing the actions that I said I would? This is extremely important. Competition we found to be one of the biggest variables that influences social pressure. Am I doing better than other people? Am I trying to compete and beat other people? And especially when the competition is directly aligned with you and progressing you towards your goals, this is very valuable. I think a lot of the problem that we have with competition is when we're competing on the wrong things. We're trying to compete on rewards that don't actually get us right to where we want to be, to that North Star that we have for ourselves. But when we can align very strongly our competition with our North Star, this is one of the biggest variables. The last one is imitation. Am I fitting in with the people around me, with my social circle? Am I imitating people that I look up to? Am I imitating people that I think are where I want to be? These kind of things are all going to influence your actions, and these all come from social pressure. I think the easiest one to do at the moment is approval. If you're by yourself, you only really need a few other people. You can just say, okay, these are the things that I'm going to do. I want you to hold me to this, okay? Some sort of accountability system. This is very strong and very easy to implement. Competition, in my opinion, has been the most valuable one. Now, this requires more infrastructure, more people, more of a system involved. But if you have this is really strong. This is one of the big focuses we have inside of the Modern Monk program. And lastly, imitation is really good if you have some sort of community, some sort of group of people around you that are all doing similar things, all working towards the same goal, all trying to get rid of the same thing. So if you have a group of people that are all trying to remove digital distraction, and you're really just trying to imitate the people around you, and all of these people are doing desirable behaviors, living without digital distraction, then you're going to try to imitate these behaviors. You're going to try and imitate these people. And this is fantastic, assuming you're imitating the right behaviors. It's very common that we surround ourselves with bad influences. And for example, we have a group of friends that all smoke cigarettes. The likelihood of us smoking cigarettes goes up significantly. We want to do this, but we want to create a strong social environment so that we're imitating the right behaviors. This is another reason why I built out the Modern Monk community, so that you can surround yourself with like-minded people who are all on this same journey to the same destination. Now, we found this to be a very impactful environment to set up. Extremely high impact on removing digital distraction. Not a huge amount of setup, but a little bit of work required to get you there in the first place, especially if you don't have some sort of community, if you don't have people to hold you accountable. But very quickly, it doesn't take a whole lot of effort to just maintain this accountability structure, to maintain this competition, this imitation, this community. Not a lot of effort to maintain, but a very high impact. So we found this to be a very strong return on time and giving you really good results in the short to medium term, and of course in the long term if you're able to maintain the system. Now, these two changes, extremely strong impact, especially in the short to medium term. Stacking the physical environment with the social environment is going to give you really strong returns. In terms of long term though, there is one thing that's going to absolutely blow everything out of the water and actually make it so that your physical environment and your social environment do not matter whatsoever. And this is your internal environment. This is an extremely strong long-term play. Now, I know that 99% of people watching this video will not implement this because it doesn't give you immediate results and it takes a bit of effort. But the people that do implement this long-term, they are going to see crazy results. What we've really built out here is the full chain. And for people in the Modern Monk community, you'll know this as the fortress system. See, what stands between us and consuming digital distraction is each layer of the fortress. Now, for most people who came into this video, you were probably sitting at the point where your fortress was simply you, willpower, and digital distraction. The only thing standing between you and consuming digital distraction was willpower. Now, over time, you may build up the access prevention layer. This is fantastic because it's immediate set and forget, and it gives you a strong return. Then you might add the social pressure layer. This adds Not quite the same level of set and forget. That requires a little bit of maintenance, but gives extremely strong returns. But the very, very max level is adding this beliefs and identity layer. See, the way the fortress system works is between you and digital distraction sits all of these blocks. But if one block is sufficiently fortified, then it will never progress to the next block. And realistically, if you just have an extremely strong beliefs and identity layer, it will never pass through this layer. You will never have to test your social pressure. You will never have to test the access that you have to this digital distraction. You will never have to test your willpower. All you have is extremely strong beliefs and identity. You will never consume digital distraction. And this is why long-term, this is the number one play, because this does not rely on your external environment. This does not rely on your physical environment. This does not rely on your social environment. This simply relies on your internal environment, which is with you wherever you are. The reason for this is that the actions that we take are directly aligned with our beliefs that we have and our personal identity. Our identity is simply a set of standards that we hold for ourselves, and beliefs are simply a justification that we have for all the actions that we take. We seek to align our actions with our beliefs and our identity. What happens is the stronger your beliefs and identity are, the more they influence your actions, and the more they influence your actions, the more they influence your outcomes. See, if I fundamentally believe that if I smoke a cigarette, I'm going to get cancer and I'm going to die. If I thought that, genuinely thought that strongly, and I had the identity, I am not a smoker, very, very unlikely that I smoke a cigarette. Even if my social environment was everyone saying, okay, you have to smoke a cigarette. And the access you literally have a cigarette in your mouth and you have zero willpower whatsoever, it doesn't matter because you fundamentally believe that this thing is going to kill you. You're not going to smoke a cigarette. Now, this is an extreme example, but it drives the point home that no matter what your other environments are like, if your internal environment is incredibly strong and incredibly aligned with you not consuming online entertainment, not using digital distraction, then you will not use it. The reason building out this internal environment is so powerful long-term is because it builds out this flywheel effect here. Essentially what happens is if you have a belief and identity, then what you're going to do is you're going to seek to align your actions with that belief and identity. So let's say, for example, you believe that running is one of the best things that you can do for your health and you have the identity of being a runner. What happens is you have this identity as a runner and you have this belief that running is good for you. You're going to run more, right? You're fundamentally going to run more because you identify as a runner and you believe it's good for you. What's going to happen as a consequence? Well, you're going to get better at running. Right? You're going to get better at running, and as a consequence, what's going to happen is it's going to strengthen your identity and your beliefs as a runner. And what's going to happen is you're going to continue to run more, and this works as a flywheel effect. Now, the only way this gets powerful is if your beliefs and identity get strong enough to influence your actions. At the end of the day, the only thing that stands between you and achieving your goals is the actions that you take. So it has to build up to the critical mass where it actually is impacting your actions. But what will happen is when it builds up to this critical mass and it's influencing your actions, is that it's going to influence your outcomes strongly. You're going to see a very, very direct correlation between you not consuming digital distraction and you hitting any material outcome in your life, whether that's getting in better shape, whether that is building your business more, earning more money, whether that is learning a new language or doing all of these things that you want to do. You're going to see a very strong direct correlation between, okay, I stopped consuming digital distraction. I have all my time and attention back and drive back. These are all the outcomes I'm getting. This is going to feed into your cycle, your beliefs and identity cycle, and you're going to continue to build up this flywheel over time. The reason that this doesn't influence change directly and immediately is because right now you probably don't have extremely powerful beliefs and identity around digital distraction. And as a consequence, you haven't built up this critical mass to where it's actually influencing your actions. And if it's not influencing your actions, it's not going to influence your outcomes. And if it's not influencing your outcomes, it's not going to fortify these beliefs. This is why it's actually important that we start off building the fortress system with preventing access and with social reinforcement. So it actually gets us to the point where we are doing the action of not doing the action, of essentially not consuming digital distraction. What's going to happen is that you're going to start building up these outcomes in your life, and it's going to start impacting your beliefs until we hit this critical mass. And this is a very, very important part to get to. Whereas building our physical and social environment, you have a very, very static impact. It's going to have a very, very constant impact, and the effort is going to change over time. It's the complete opposite in terms of our internal environment. What happens is that the effort required really doesn't change much. You put in a small amount of effort every day to influence your internal environment. What happens is that at the very start, you're not getting a strong return whatsoever because you haven't built up this critical mass. What happens is over time, this critical mass builds and builds and builds to the point where you're getting this exponential return on your impact, to the point where you stop consuming digital distraction completely and every single other layer is completely irrelevant. Once you hit this point, you will never want to consume digital distraction again. This is the point that I've been able to get to, which has allowed me to live without digital distraction since the end of 2024. And this gets you to the point where you can have all of the access to digital distraction you want. You could have a social environment telling you consume digital distraction. You just will not do it. And this is extremely powerful long term. So if you want to get started today, the first place to start is by reducing access. Add as much friction as possible, because the more friction that you add between you and consuming digital distraction, the less you're going to do it. If you get it to the point where it is physically impossible to access, then you just can't do it. Now, if you're an online entrepreneur and you want to turn distraction into deep work, then you can join the Modern Monk community for free. In the first week, the Fortress system is one of the big things that we run through. I run through it in much more detail than I can in this short YouTube video. So if you want to check that out, I'll leave a link in the description below. For everyone else, if you want to figure out how to fix your attention span, I'll leave a video for that right here. So I will either see you in that video or in the Modern Monk community. Cheers.